Very honored to have with us today John Bridgeland. He's the president and CEO of the Civic Enterprises, a public policy firm in Washington, D.C. He's also the chair of the Franklin Project at the Aspen Institute, and we're going to talk to him today about his book called The Heart of the Nation. And John, welcome. By the way, my son is a former Aspen colleague.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, Senator Jason Atkinson, so I don't know if you've bumped into him or not.
Sure.
Listen, nice to have you with us today. Your book deals with an interesting, really powerful subject, and that is, can we bring all this division back to some kind of a togetherness? Is it possible?
I think it is. I saw it. I was in my office in the White House on 9/11, and then moments after the attack was literally below the bunker of the White House, watching planes being grounded from all over the country. But literally within hours, phone calls came in great numbers, people all across the country saying, what can we do to help? How can we give back? How can we use our time and energies to bring the country back together in the face of national tragedy? And we need to resurrect that spirit of volunteering and our ability to work together across background and political belief to take on our big challenges in our communities and restore the sense of national purpose that we can get things done.
Well, you know, right after 9/11, and of course, we saw that. We saw the coming together. We saw a return to churches. We saw the American flag everywhere. I mean, there was a sense of national togetherness and pride unlike anything we've seen, maybe even since World War II and the ending of the war. But here we are, 12 years later, and it seems to be gone.
So interesting. We had literally 5 to 6 years of historically high levels of volunteering. And you're right, coming out of World War II, we had the emergence of the greatest generation who would go on to give more in charitable contributions, give back to their communities, volunteer, vote, run for public service, and do great things for the country. At the same time, our partisan divisions were really low, and even the gap between rich and poor was historically low. And we need to recreate that sense of togetherness. I think our national government, our national politics don't reflect that sense of unity, obviously. But I think in communities all across the country, we're seeing wonderful evidence of people working side by side in our nation's lowest performing schools, helping to conserve our rivers and parks, helping to reach out and help the poor and the needy. And often faith-based institutions, which do so much of the social service delivery in the country, are on the front lines of these, what we like to call the armies of compassion, helping to restore hope and help to those in need.
The term called public service, it seems to have evolved into me and my agenda.
Yeah, exactly right. Very sadly, and that's not what Jefferson was talking about when he penned that mystical term, the pursuit of happiness. He wasn't talking about, what I can get, more cars, more vacations. He was talking about the complete and happy life, and it's something that we help one another to achieve. And the good news, I think, is, we're seeing that spirit in communities all across America, people coming together to address our high school dropout epidemic, people building Habitat for Humanity homes, people working together to reintegrate our veterans that often, have very rocky transitions back home into community life. And I think that's the spirit we have to lift up all across the country, and again, give us confidence that we can solve problems together. I also think it'll foster a generation of leaders who've learned to work together side by side, and those who enter public life and run for office, will actually know how to get things done.
All right. Can we do this without a national tragedy? Can we do this? What can inspire us to come back together? I mean, we need that today more than ever. I mean, we are in a mess, and the partisan divide has never been greater. What could possibly dissolve that and bring us back together?
I think the sense of hope is actually innate. We know from the latest neuroscience that we're wired to cooperate. When we help one another, even when it's against our own immediate self-interests, it literally triggers regions of the brain that make us healthier and happier. We did a survey of both millennials and boomers, and the baby boomers said, we're worried we're leaving the world in worse condition than we inherited it, and millions of them want to mentor and tutor young people in our neediest public schools. They want to work to help restore the state of our national treasures, our national parks. They want to reach out to veterans and their families and not just say thank you in an airport, but literally work to help reintegrate them into the community. And I think it's driven by need. So when you have a passion, you have an interest, get involved in your community, find out what the needs are, and then work through local organizations to help get things done. I think that'll rescue the spirit of hope and volunteering in the country.
And yet that sends up some kind of a dichotomy, because you have the boomers who have made it worse, and you got the Xers and the millennials are saying, no thanks, you guys lied to us, I'm not going to take your words now. So how do we bridge that gap?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think one way is there are these efforts like Experience Corps that take older Americans who obviously, particularly with these intergenerational dynamics where the shift in resources and these issues around Social Security and Medicare, et cetera, that could really divide the generations, and bringing older Americans together with younger Americans and the millennials to serve side by side. And the good news is it's happening all over the country. There are 1,500 dropout factory high schools in the United States where we lose about 50% of our nation's young people who don't graduate, with huge consequences to them and the country. And we're seeing good examples of older Americans, younger Americans working side by side to do the mentoring and the tutoring and the extra supports to keep them on track.
So do you think we have lost sight of what it is, what freedom and liberty is versus socialism? I mean, that is the great debate today. Do we understand what we're losing?
I think most Americans understand it, and I think most Americans are frustrated. They understand that with freedom and liberty come extraordinary responsibilities. The founding generation just didn't win our freedom overnight. They literally took up their muskets, they put their lives on the line, they declared our independence, and had a very difficult revolutionary war that was on the brink of disaster again and again and again. But they never lost hope. They never lost faith in what they called providence or God, and eventually would win the day. But they were worried that in creating a government and a system so strongly founded on rights, in the revolutionary period, they understood what that meant and what was involved to get those rights, that future generations might forget their responsibilities associated with maintaining that liberty. And General McChrystal, who I'm working with at on the Franklin Project you mentioned, says that for the first time in history, less than half of 1% are serving in our nation's military, and our notion of service has become dangerously narrow. And we need to make sure that there are more opportunities on the home front for civilians to make that connection between what's required to preserve our freedom and the obligations we have to serve on the home front.
John, we seem to have lost our innocence. There's something about the simpleness and the innocence of America that got thrown under the bus. How would you describe that?
Yeah, I think we live in a interconnected world now. Both the blessings and curse of technology. The days of Mayberry and communities around the country are forever gone, in the sense that we can never live in isolation. We're connected now in ways that we never imagined. But I also think that gives us great hope. I think that the spirit of neighborhood and community volunteering and caring about one another and getting deeply involved in your community and state is so vitally important, and perhaps more important now than ever. And having opportunities to connect with communities around the country and people around the world, and to learn from one another about things that are working, things that are effective, and what we can do as even internationally to make a difference, is actually something that gives me hope for the future.
We've done a little bit of neuromarketing and generational science research ourselves, and I found out that the millennials are just exactly what you're talking about. They like serving. They like, in fact, they're now saving. They're kind of bringing back the traditional thinking of America. They like traditional family structure. In fact, they were the lead generation that went to Haiti after the earthquake to volunteer. So there's something generationally that is taking place in this country.
There really is. There are about 77 million millennials, and they're showing, as you've indicated, these civic habits that are extraordinary. They don't want to wait around for government. They don't want to wait around for someone else to take on a challenge. They're creating their own institutions, own nonprofits, many working through faith-based institutions, many not only working in their communities close to home, but literally wanting to deploy to villages and huts, halfway across the world, going to Haiti, going to Africa, trying to end malaria deaths in Africa, doing extraordinary things to give back. And that gives me hope that literally the millennial generation, if it's cultivated and nurtured, and our national life doesn't become too dysfunctional, that we could literally create the next greatest generation that could do extraordinary things for our country.
All right, the book is entitled The Heart of the Nation. Where can they get it, John? Barnes & Noble, Amazon?
Yeah, you can, Amazon.com. It's just Heart of the Nation, Volunteering in America's Civic Spirit.
Wonderful. Thanks for your work, my friend. Keep it up, okay?
Thank you so much.
All right, we'll
Good to be with you.